G'day guys, it's Dan from Carbon Winches here. Today we're going to show you how to do an eye splice in your winch rope. So a couple of reasons that you might need to know this is, firstly, the most obvious one is if you've broken your winch rope in a recovery, you can use this method to create an eye to reattach your hook. The other reason that you might need to know this is over time your winch rope deteriorates, and what you can do is actually swap your rope around, so the section of rope that's closest to the drum generally doesn't get used that much. You'll find that the first 10 to 15 meters will tend to wear faster than the rest of the rope. So after a couple of years, what you might want to do is actually just take the rope all the way off the drum, put a new eye splice in the end of it, and then basically swap the rope around so that the newer section is now the section that will be used more, and this is one way to get some extra life out of your rope. Okay, so what we'll do is just explain the basic tools that we need. So the items that you'll need to use for the splice today are as follows. So generally we all have a bit of wire kicking around. An old coat hanger does the job really nicely. So what we need to do is create a fid, which is a technical term for the splicing tool. So all you need to do is just basically double it back on itself. It's about 200 mil long, and just create a couple of little right angle bends in the end there. So that's the first part. The second part is a really sharp knife for cutting the rope. It's really strong fibre, so having a sharp knife really helps in this process. We'll need a permanent marker just to mark out the rope, and also some electrical tape. Okay, let's get into it. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that the end of the rope is cut off square. So generally, if a rope breaks, you'll find it's all frayed and fuzzy. So we just want to get to a point where the rope is back in its sort of regular, uniform construction, and just cut it off square so we've got a starting point. So the first thing we're going to do is get our fid, and we're going to measure out 3 fid lengths and mark them with our permanent marker. So we've got one here, so mark that. Stretch that out again, mark that, and then one more time, so mark that there. Okay, alright, so that's the first part. Now what we're going to do is we need to create a taper in the end of the section. So these 1, 2, 3, these 3 sections of rope are actually going to end up inside the other section of rope. So what we need to do is taper this end here, so it just creates a nice uniform sort of part inside the rope. I'm not sure how to explain it, but basically we need to taper this so it doesn't create like a really abrupt change in the rope shape at this point, because that'll create a weak point. So the way that we taper it is as follows. So from the first fid marking point, we want to count basically 2 strands. So we mark them. You can see here 1, 2. Then we want to skip 2. We go 1, 2. Then we want to mark 2, and then skip 2, and then mark the other 2. So what this does, this is a 12 strand braid, okay? So when you mark the rope like this, we're actually marking the individual strands within the braid. So what we're going to do now is actually we'll pull these out of the rope, and we'll actually cut them out of this section of the rope. So just really carefully, you don't want to you just want to try not to damage the rope too much. You just want to pull out the one section there at a time. Right, so we pull it out a little bit, you can see that where the rope's been sitting, there's a, it's a little bit hard to see, but there's a bit of a sort of like a compressed spot there. So that's generally the spot that we want to cut at, and we want to cut it in the direction of the end of the rope. So let's get in there, and again, a really sharp knife helps here. Right, so we just cut that, then we can get this end here. Well, haven't quite finished, haven't quite cut it off. There we go. So then all we do is we just get that and we just slide that out, okay, and put that aside. I'll just neaten that up, and we do the same for the other 5 strands. So we just pull them out, cut that off, just make sure it's all 100% cut out. There we go. Then we do the next 2. So you can usually just get your finger in under there, it's not too hard to separate it. Okay, just make sure that you're cutting through all the fibres. And we just pull that out. Do the same for this one. There we go. Always that one little fibre there, just nick that off. Okay, here we go, last one. Oops, second last one. Okay, oh, not quite there. Rightio. Okay, so we just pull that out. So then we just, as you can see, we've basically reduced the rope by half. So there's only half the amount of strands in that section now. So once we've done that, what we need to do is just separate the 6 strands at the end here, and then we're just going to basically cut them on an angle, so it just creates a further taper. So you can just spread them out on the bench there. You can leave the last one there, but we want to cut the others on a fairly sharp sort of angle. So let's get in there with a knife. Cut them all off. There we go. Okay. So what we have, if some of them are a little bit close together, you can just sort of taper them a little bit more. This isn't really, it's not really rocket science, guys, but if you pay a little bit of attention to detail here, it'll create a stronger result. So pretty much see here that basically we've got a nice sort of taper now. Okay, on to the next part. Okay, so what we're going to do now, guys, is just create the loop. Generally your winch rope has a thimble on the end of it that the hook goes through, or the rope actually goes through to form the eye. So you can recover the original thimble if the rope's broken, or if you need a new one, you can get a new one. We will have these available on the website separately in the next month or so. So keep an eye on that if you do want to carry a spare for one of these. But today we're just going to do an eye splice without using the thimble. So, but it's good to have if you do want to do it properly, but we're just sort of considering that we're out in the field here and we don't have that. So generally the winch ropes have quite a lot of the sheath protector, so you can actually nick that off and use that as a bit of a protector for when you form the eye. So what we're going to do is go back to that mark that we made. So we had the 1 feed length, the 2, the 3, the 3rd feed length position, right? So that's going to be one part of the eye. So what we're going to do is create an eye like that, and then we're going to mark it. So I've already marked this with the texter. So we can slide the rope protector up into position. Okay, where are we? There we go. Then we create the eye. All right. So that's pretty much what we're going to end up with as the end result. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a lock-in stitch. So this section of the rope is the main section of the rope. This is the long section of the rope. So what we need to do is actually get this whole section of the rope through the center of this part here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is create the first lock-in stitch. So what we need to do is we need to get our fid. We need to split the rope in half. So we need 6 strands on each side. So we just open up the strands like that with the fid, and then we just count to make sure that we've got 6 on each side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. One snuck through there on the other side. So what you can do is just pull the fid back in, come around, and there we go. So it's really important to make sure you go through the center. So we'll just count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. So this method's not normally done, but it's how our factory actually does the winch rope. It's a double lock-in stitch. So the first thing we need to do is, once we've got a hole through the center of the rope, we need to create a bight of rope in the other side. Now this is the long side. Okay, so just open it up. Make sure you're going through the center. So you can open this right. You can open this up without too much detriment to the rope. So there we go. Okay. So what we need to do now is, so that's going to be our eye. Now we're just going to pull the end of the rope through all the way. So this is a full length winch rope. So just bear with me for one moment and pull this all the way through. If you do this double locking stitch, it'll never come undone. So there's other methods out there. Some only do a single, but this is pretty much 100% fail safe. Alright, so just getting to the end where the other rope protector section is. Just be careful not to pick up too many fibres as you're going through with this process. So in this case we're actually making a winch extension rope, and so we're going to have an eye on both ends. So this one's already got an eye on one side, so if that's the case, again, just be careful and slide that through. There we go. Okay. So that's the first part. All right, we've got the first part through. Now for the second part of the splice. Okay, before we continue to do the splice, we need to install the fid onto the end of the winch rope. So when we made the fid, we just put a couple of little 90-degree bends in here. So all you need to do is basically line it up so it's pretty much level with the end of the fid, and wherever that lines up, just get the two little 90-degree bends and just sort of dig them in between the fibres there. So that'll just lock the fid onto the end of the rope, and it won't actually pull out while we're actually doing the splice. So all we do is basically just start at the end here, tape it up, and we're just going to sort of work our way with the tape down until we get to the end. So you don't need to tape the whole thing up. All we're doing is just trying to create a nice, even situation where it'll allow the fid to go down the center of the rope nice and easily. So there we go, guys. So just smooth it off, flatten off those edges, just make sure there's no sort of sharp bits that are sticking out on the tape that might get caught up while you're pushing it through the center of the rope. But that's all you need to do. Okay, so once you've got the fid taped up, we're going to do the second part of the lock-in stitch, which was the same as the first part. So we're just going to count down sort of 3 sections of braid. So 1, 2, 3, and this is where we're going to go through the rope again. So just open it up, get it through, make sure we've got 6 on each side. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, beautiful. And we're just going to pass the whole lot through. That creates, the rope's a bit messy, but that creates our double lock-in stitch there. Right, so when there's tension on the rope, this sort of double lock, as you can see here, it'll lock on itself under tension, and it won't allow the end section of the rope to be pulled out through the loop. So the last part of the splice that we need to do is actually feed this tail end back into the main section of the rope. So again, we're just going to count about 3 braids down, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to go into the rope, into the center of the rope at this point. All right, so just gently open that up. You can push to the rope together and it'll actually open up the center. So then you can slide it all the way through. There we go. So at this point what we're doing is just feeding the tail end of the rope into the main section. So you can bunch it all up and then just work it down until you get the end of the fid through. Generally once that's in, it gets a little bit easier. And you don't want to fight it, so patience is the key here. Just work it through. As you slide it, you can see that the tail end gets sucked into the rope. So we're going to go down to the point, the fourth fid marker point. And just keep pushing that down. Alright, so we're nearly there. There's that marker. So at that point, what we're going to do is just get the fid to come out. Pull that through. Alright, so we want to get all of it through. There we go. Okay. So, at this point, what we do is find the end of the tape. There we go. And we're just going to take the tape off. Don't worry too much about if it's getting a bit fuzzy down the tapered end, because we can sort that out. The good thing about electrical tape is it doesn't really stick that much to the actual fibres. If you use masking tape or some other sort of paper tape, it can actually stick quite badly and be hard to take off, but electrical tape or duct tape should work pretty well. Okay, so tape's off, get the fid, take that out. Alright, so we've got our tapered end here, so just run your hand over it a few times. Just make sure everything's looking like relatively neat. If there's any sort of strand, like any bowed strands there, you can just pull them out and smooth them down along the side of the on the side of the rope there. All right, so we're nearly done. All right, the last part of what we need to do now is actually just pull the main section of rope down. When we do this, it will suck this end section into the main section of the rope. So if you remember the first section, the tail section of the rope, including the tapered section, was 1, 2, 3 fid lengths in total up to the eye. And then we measured from the eye, we measured 1, 2, 3, 4 fid lengths down. So the theory about doing that is if you go past the point of where you need to, when you do this bit, it'll actually suck this end of the rope into the center of the rope, and it'll be completely clean and tidy. So there's no need to sort of manually try and get the end of this tag into the rope. So basically what you need to do is, what I normally do is grab the end of the rope here, and you can pretty much just pull on the eye, and that'll set the locking stitches as neatly as possible. So just put a bit of tension on there, and then you just start feeding the rope down, and you can see here that it's already been pulled in a little bit. So as I do that, you can see it just gets sucked into the rope, and there you go, all done. And that's it, guys. So we've got our eye. You can see that we've got our double locking stitch there. So this rope's a little bit been used a bit, so it's a little bit messy, but on this side you can see it's got the double locking stitch, and then it goes into the core of the rope. And then as it goes through, you can see that there's you really can't tell. All you can sort of see is that the rope gets thinner as it goes down, so there's really no noticeable point where you can see where the tag end of the rope finishes. So that's perfect, that's what we want. We don't want any major imperfections in the rope at all. We just want it to be all nice and neat and tidy. And if you do it like this, that'll be just as strong as it came out of the factory. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for watching.